The title of this video series is called Organizing Intelligence, How Thinking Actually Works. In this video series, we're going to focus on the mechanism behind intelligence. We're not really going to get into emotions just yet because they're actually the product of what I'll be describing as the natural and perceptual thought processes working in tandem, and explaining how they work will require a breakdown of how perceptive phenomena affect the autonomic nervous system and subsequently natural chemical production cycles and or responses that occur in the mind or body whenever it's exposed to certain types of stimulations, be they situational, observational, sensory related, what have you. If you pay attention to this video, however, you should be able to work out the mechanism behind emotions, but either way it goes, we got to get through all of this before we can get to that. So, by the way, I want you to keep in mind that this is a video series. If for whatever reason you're feeling I'm moving too fast at certain points, you can always stop, pause, or rewind. I'm going to explain all of this to the best of my ability. However, natural principles and English don't fit together so well, so I'm going to marry examples to some of my explanations in efforts to help keep things consumable and or relatable. And I say and or a lot. We're going for comprehension and understanding here, not necessarily knowledge or imitation. So we're going to start with the natural mind. There are two primary modes of intelligence in this universe, and I refer to them as natural organization and the supplantive mode. That means there are two types of intelligence management or brain systems, if you will. Okay? If we define a brain principally, that is, as the central processing unit for an organism which serves to gather and organize information from the outside world in efforts to help beings respond to, navigate through, and or interact with the experiential reality, and then also as the mechanism that facilitates bodily function and communication between the body's respective systems and building blocks, then there are two types of brain systems, and in my work I refer to them as the natural mind and the perceptive mind. Okay, the natural mind is what all born, authentic organisms perform through. I recently happened upon this term generative, and I like it, so I'm going to use it to describe natural organisms in this series, at least fairly often. Aside from managing internal bodily systems, the natural mind or brain is meant to serve two main functions, and those are first to establish perspective, which is basically the sum product of all the mental processes working together to construct an experiential vantage point from the present perfect location, which is what organisms use to interact with and respond to reality. And the second or other main function of the brain is, or at least should be, organic anchoring, and that is connecting organisms to the natural locations, cycles, and contexts they're purpose for, so that they're tuned to and work in accord with the various systems they're born of and meant to help facilitate or contribute to. You see, brains don't just help you think or manage bodily functions behind the scenes. They should also serve to connect you to the body of your true host organism, and for life forms living on this planet, that should be the organism we refer to as Earth. Earth is a living host to a wide variety of organisms, okay? Most of the life forms on this planet are actually part of its physical body, and then others, well, let's just say, we got some explaining to do. I do terrible impressions. Anyway, if you're not familiar with my work, then I work from a premise I call the structural building block framing, which is basically bodies inside of bodies, hosts inside of hosts, cycles inside of cycles, principles inside of principles, etc. Simply put, all organisms on this planet which perform at or in some proximity to the scale of plane humans live and function on are like cells to the body of this planet. Organisms that function on smaller scales of plane could be likened to like atoms or molecules, etc. Just like this planet could be likened to a cell on the body of the galaxy, and the galaxy a cell to the body of the universe, etc., etc. Universe is a composite organism which is made up of hosts of living organisms, which are made up of hosts of living organisms, etc., etc., yada, yada, you get it. Let's step away from that for a second and get back to brain systems. So what is the perceptive mind? Well, the perceptive mind is what parasites and viral entities perform through. In this video series, we're going to refer to them as supplantive beings or organisms as often as possible, though that word parasite has this sort of moralistic undertone to it, and from what I've gathered, words with symbolic meanings like that have this tendency to quell objective consideration and proper analyzation. In other words, we want to see things according to function, purpose, and mechanism, and not according to how they fit with our beliefs of good and bad, right or wrong, moral and immoral, etc. But anyway, back to the perceptive mind. The perceptive mind is like an approximation of the natural mind in many ways. Only, unlike the natural mind, it doesn't really connect supplantive beings to the bodies of the hosts they occupy and perform through. Furthermore, it runs on a different mode or operating system than generative organisms do, okay? So Earlier, I mentioned that there are two types of intelligence. Well, the reason there are two types of intelligence in this universe is because there are two modes or systems of natural organization currently affecting the body of the planet and universe, and I refer to them as the intuitive OS and the supplantive OS. The intuitive OS is or represents balanced natural organization, and the supplantive OS is a type of disturbed or disrupted natural organization. We can't get into the full mechanism behind the respective systems in this video, but we'll address them to the degree that they factor into the information provided here, and then certainly at least attempt to cover them thoroughly in future works. One of the most notable differences between the two operating modes is how they motivate organisms towards reality in all things considered. The natural mind and organisms that perform through it run on the intuitive OS and are motivated towards reality in all things according to purpose and function, while the perceptive mind runs on the supplantive OS, and organisms that perform through it are motivated towards reality according to the principle or phenomenon humans call desire. Okay? Principally speaking, the phenomenon we call desire translates into deficit, vacuum, the devoid, abyss, the inarticulable hunger. These are the closest English words I can think of to describe it, okay? So basically, sorting out how intelligence works, at least with respect to how humans tend to value and recognize it, really boils down to one really simple question, and that is, what inspires organisms, or what inspires how organisms view, interpret, are motivated towards, and respond to reality, and are there remarkable differences between how organisms are motivated towards reality that can be used to identify and or classify types of intelligence above and beyond our current modes, ideals, standards, and practices. That all sounded a little complex though, so let's make it a little simpler. Is there a system already in place that can sort different types of intelligence and then define what intelligence is and explain how it works? And if there is, and there is, then shouldn't we want to know what that system is? I am so glad I asked. Okay, first things first, let's talk about function and purpose versus desire and subsequently consumption. This is skipping a little ahead here, but since we're about to get into the makeup of the natural and perceptive lenses anyway, let's talk about purpose and desire real quick. All right, so we're going to discuss these values in terms of their placement within the intellectual process. Both lenses, that is the perceptive lens and the natural lens, are in essence layers of mental processes that serve to convert information and stimulations organisms receive through their sensory faculties into physical or mental perspectives or vantage points. As motivations towards the experiential reality, purpose and desire are necessarily precluded from the makeup of the respective lenses and or brain systems. That is to say, if you're motivated towards reality by desire, that is by deficit or lacking, then you don't really see things through a lens of desire so much as you see things because of desire itself. Same would apply to purpose and function. You don't really see things through a lens of purpose so much as you see things or certain things because of your purpose in and of itself, okay? What we're talking about here is the order of inspiration. But as my man Levi would put it, what's up Levi? Yo, let's put these cookies on the bottom shelf. Let me see if I can make this simpler. Okay, let's liken this ideal type I'm proffering to gills versus lungs. Aquatic creatures versus land-dwelling creatures. Generally speaking though, I know there are going to be a few exceptions to the rules here, but let's liken the supplantive OS, which runs on desire, to water, and the intuitive OS, which runs on purpose, to air. Okay, the respective breathing systems are not the atmospheres themselves. If a fish breathes through its gills, its respiratory system is not the ocean itself, but instead because of the ocean, regardless of which direction of causality you're attempting to organize that from. Same thing would go for land-dwelling creatures. The air would not be the lungs themselves, but instead lungs are designed to draw in air. Desire and purpose occur before the mental processes and are, for lack of a better expression, the oral fields intelligence management systems draw essence from. In this sense, desire is the supplantive OS and purpose is the intuitive OS. They facilitate what we know as intelligence, so again, they're precluded from the respective lenses and or brain systems entirely. And the question now becomes, how are humans motivated towards reality? Are we programmed and or built to see reality through an air of purpose or an air of desire? Let's get back on track real quick. Back to the perceptive mind. Okay, so the perceptive mind is disconnected from nature. Generally speaking, it's ignorant and unaware of universal principles, systems, modes, and organizational structures, okay? It's fundamentally detached from the body of this planet and universe, and also respectively from the bodies of the host organisms it operates and performs through. This means it shares a very weak and in many cases is even devoid of a sympathetic connection to nature, that is, a synergistic awareness for the systems, organisms, habitats, etc. that it occupies, and therefore it relies on a unique set of intellectual skills, acuities, mental processes, proclivities that serve to help it survive and ensure its safety, comfort, and progress and advancement. Before we can get into the real meat here, there are a few things to note about brain systems. First of all, organisms performing through the same type of brain system don't necessarily have to share common physical characteristics. In fact, the physical makeup of brain systems can vary greatly in complexity from one species to the next, and then also according to scale of plane. Okay, so understanding how intelligence works isn't so much about charting the locations of different types of physical features or mechanisms for or within the respective brain systems per se, but instead more about understanding the what's, whys, and hows that differentiate one type of intelligence from the other. Just think of it like technology that runs on AC current versus technology that runs on DC. I got tons of examples. So again, the natural mind is what all generative, that is, born, authentic organisms perform through, and the perceptive mind is what supplantive beings, parasites, viral entities, and agents perform through. We'll start with the natural mind. Before we get into the mechanism of the natural mind, however, we've got a few more things to address about the operating system. Again, the natural mind is tuned to what I call the intuitive operating system. When we observe the intuitive operating system in nature, it's what we know or refer to as instinct. What it actually is, though, is authentic, that is natural perspective, or seeing reality without filters, and I'll explain that. From our vantage point, it seems most wild animals are born knowing which foods to eat, which predators to avoid, where to roam, which prey to pursue, etc. During natural disasters, many wild animals instinctively move to high ground and generally tend to steer clear of calamities that catch humans off guard when or if there's no forewarning. The question we've often asked ourselves is why them and not us? Science tries to explain it by suggesting animals have a perceptibility for or certain sensitivity to frequencies in sound. However, the real answer, well, at least according to the principles I see, is because they're sympathetically connected to the body of this planet through the intuitive OS, as all organisms on this planet should be. We'll explore that some more in a little. Okay, but moving on though, the natural mind imbues organisms with what I'm calling the natural lens. I'm calling it the natural lens so as to create a point of comparison between natural and perceptive thought processes and vantage points. However, the natural perspective is not and does not utilize or require lenses per se. Natural intelligence works spherically, while perceptive thinking works telegraphically or linear directionally. Natural perspective is the true perspective. Organisms typically experience reality in clear terms through the natural lens. By this I mean their mental states and processes aren't skewed or affected by perceptual phenomena like meanings, symbolisms, cultures, beliefs, and then ideations of righteousness, agreements, or authority. Added to that, their sensory faculties aren't limited to or exclusively reliant on the sixth the perceptive mind and lens tends to approach reality through, which makes organisms that perform through the natural lens capable of moving and living in principles with no special effort or consideration paid towards them. The natural lens views reality in terms of systems, being, purpose, and expression. So much so, in fact, that these things don't even register in the natural mind. For instance, there's no need to ask a whale what its purpose in life is, but it inherently understands where on the body of this planet its purpose for, and then how it's supposed to spend its life. It doesn't need to question the meaning of life or seek to understand or explain why it exists. That's because it's tuned to a system of natural organization that encodes all of that information into it already, similar to how a cell on your finger is encoded with information that determines its location, function, range of motion, and performance, both in terms of your overall bodily function and then for its respective scale of plane. Like, yeah, the cells on your fingers have day-to-day lives, just like you and me, only how they experience time doesn't really coincide with how we experience it. The intuitive operating system runs on, let's just call them frequencies, and the frequencies it runs on are synonymous with what humans know as love and fear, which in principle really is bonding and separation, okay? Principally speaking, the values bonding and separation equal love and fear. A quick example of that. When you love something, you bond with it. You want to make it or keep it or draw it close to you. And when you fear it, you want to put distance between yourself and the thing you fear. We interpret bonding and separation in many different ways, especially through the perceptive lens. But like in written and spoken languages, bonding means yes and separation or distance means no. In terms of relationships with others, bonding or love is accepting someone and fear is distance or rejecting them, okay? It's closeness versus space, male versus female, matter versus principle, yin yang, positive, negative, etc. All right? FYI, fear is not a bad thing. It's a requirement for spatial relevance. It's how things remain functional and proximal, okay? But all things in existence are different combinations of and also contribute to, but are also products of different versions, concentrations, densities, and expressions of bonding and separation, which is happening simultaneously on infinite scales of plane. It's the most basic universal principle and theme. It's the system of mechanism that animates the body of this universe and also the system of organization that facilitates all types and manners of matter as in material. And not just for this universe, but for all the organisms it's comprised of and belongs to and contributes to as well. In my video, Universal Math, I explained that the numbers 1, 2, and 3 are not actually primes, but instead what I refer to as core values. This is because the numbers 1, 2, and 3, and for that fact, all numbers are in fact really base principles. The number 1 equals bonding, substance, male. The number 2 equals separation, void, female. And the number 3 equals balance, sum, offspring, necessity. In the video, I explained that 1 equals progress, 2 expansion, 3 necessity. However, the housing themes for these concepts are male, female, and offspring. The intuitive OS runs on bonding, separation, and balance. By the way, just so we're clear here, female equals void, as in space. Desire is devoid, as in lacking. Don't get the two confused. Let's get back to the natural lens now, okay? The natural lens sees all things in whole terms. It doesn't recognize or deal in fractals or reductive conceptual terms. For instance, if you were wandering through the woods and happened across a slice of cake, you'd more than likely recognize it was cut from a larger body, while a fox or any organism performing through the natural lens would simply recognize it as being a whole value in its own right. Like, even if the piece of cake was side by side with the larger portion it was cut from, the natural lens would simply recognize two whole yet distinguishable values. Another thing to note is that the natural mind, via the natural lens, is what facilitates adaptation. It affords organisms a certain range of flexibility that allows them to conform to circumstances at and on multiple scales of plane, both within their present environments and down to and throughout the respective universes that are their bodies. And yes, every organism's body is a living universe made up of living universes and so on. But enough of that for now. Let's get to the mechanism part of the natural brain, the thought processes. And by mechanism, I'm referring to the collection of mental processes that fit and function together as building blocks for intellectualism, all of which ultimately form the natural lens. Let's start at the top, or from the outer layer of the natural lens, and that'll be with the conscious mind, okay? What is the conscious mind? Well, the conscious mind is active thought. It's the brain's capacity for attention, consideration, and response, which manifests in the form of things like focus, decision-making ability. That is the ability to participate in, interact with, and respond to the experiential reality. Consciousness is where the mental processes of consideration, physical reaction, and response occur. The conscious mind is what we use to navigate through reality. The conscious mind is comprised of, supported by, and facilitated through a core subset of mental processes without which it is rendered virtually inactive. And those processes are awareness, cognition, conceptualization, reasoning, and finally local intuition. Working from the top down or outer layer in, what should rest just beneath the faculty of consciousness is awareness. However, in human beings, there's a foreign presence co-opting the mind, which rests just between the faculties of consciousness and awareness, and that is perception, the forced perspective of the ego parasite. Just think of it like a very well-hidden parasitic tongue louse in the human brain. A tongue louse made up of, or that works through, a rogue network of chemical receptors. That's ego, and we're getting to ego very soon. Back to awareness. Awareness is the mental process that takes in and sorts information received through the sensory faculties. Awareness is basically the mental system that facilitates and manages all of the different facets of observation in addition to what we know as the autonomic nervous system. There are 7 primary sensory faculties or conduits for observation that play a role in awareness, and those are sight, taste, touch, smell, hearing, kinesthesia, and local intuition. Okay, after the faculty of awareness comes the cycle of cognition. The cycle of cognition is the mental process that organizes information taken in through the sensory faculties into expressions of familiarity, which serve to help establish temporal, spatial, or contextual location of self, or the location of or for external values as they would exist in relation to self, or in relation to a system we're observing or performing in. Basically, cognition is the mental process that helps us figure out what we're looking at, where we are, what we're hearing, feeling, or experiencing so that we can conceptualize it. Next comes the cycle of conceptualization. The natural mind generally recognizes and deals in principles. The mental process of conceptualization converts information that's passed through the cycle of cognition into principle expressions so that it can be organized, prioritized, and then sorted out through the mental process of reasoning. Okay, reasoning is the mental process of organizing concepts or principles in efforts to establish and or help organisms understand how they exist in relation to observed values. Ultimately, the purpose of reasoning is to flesh out, that is, identify prevailing themes or principles pertaining to observed values, situations, or contexts, which should then serve to help indicate whether or not a person or organism should bond with, that is, accept, consume, connect with, move towards the observed values, or distance themselves from or reject them. Okay? Reasoning should also help organisms understand and also identify how they're meant to bond with external values. For instance, you wouldn't nurture an apple but eat your baby, or leave your baby unprotected in the presence of predatory animals. You wouldn't congregate or propagate with wild predators and then avoid all forms of interaction with your own species. Those aren't reasonable things to do. Okay? And finally, we come to local intuition. Yes, it's both a sensory faculty and also a mental process in its own right. Local intuition is the physical feeling or sensation that should accompany natural reasoning, which generally supports reasoning and confirms or influences as to whether or not organisms should bond with or separate from external physical or conceptual values. Intuition is a mental process, however, only in the sense that it should work in tandem with reasoning. Locally, it manifests in the form of a feeling of confirmation, or in the form of urges to move toward or away from external values. However, it's actually the product of the sympathetic connection that physiologically connects organisms to the bodies of their hosts through their habitats and species. When you get an intuitive impulse about something, it's basically your host organism's greater operating system guiding you towards behaviors, choices, or through different manifestations of bonding and separation that ultimately serve to help facilitate balance or automation for the greater system. Okay? Side note, a lot of times people can confuse perception for intuition, which is why it's so important to make clear distinctions between the respective modes of mental processes. All right, perception runs on desire and is exclusive to exploitative endeavors and or social context. Intuition runs on purpose and makes you instantly feel drawn to or repelled by individuals or situational phenomena. Humans work through both the natural and perceptive thought processes. However, we don't know what from what as of right now, so everything is just kind of jumbled together, which is why we're lost in this grand state of confusion. I want you to keep in mind that through series and through multiple forms of expressions for the frequencies of love and fear, that is bonding and separation, the cells, systems, and building blocks of organisms' bodies are made animate, okay? The intuitive operating system is what orchestrates interaction between body structural building blocks, which results in animation for their host. Your body is currently being animated through the intuitive operating system. Your own structural building blocks are responding intuitively to instructions that are either being manufactured through your conscious mind or through your faculty of awareness in the form of chemical releases and electrical impulses generated through the autonomic nervous system, which in essence is causing some of your cells, their cycles, and building blocks to group and or bond together, and then others to distance and separate, so that ultimately you can move your hand or your leg, or so that your heart can beat. Okay? This is all a system of mechanism. None of this is happenstance. Interesting note. The reason most animals don't communicate through what we perceive as structured languages is because they communicate primarily through the intuitive operating system, a system humans don't really have access to. We're actually the ones who are excluded from true universal intelligence, not animals. Okay, that's the most basic and broad sweeping overview for the natural lens and intuitive OS that I could come up with. It can manifest in any number of organisms ranging from insects, plants, lizards, mammals, avian organisms, marine life, etc. In the next video, we'll get into the supplantive operating system, the basis for the perceptive lens.